A wake-up call, that's what they called it. Soft words, clean words, safe words. But the data doesn't speak politely, it bleeds. Ducati didn't lose Coda on Sunday, they lost it the moment their race stopped behaving like a race, and the first rider it broke was Francesco Bagnaia. He led not briefly, not by chance. He controlled the sprint, built the rhythm, dictated the pace exactly like the rider Ducati keeps claiming he still is. Then the floor shifted beneath him, not from one error, not from one overtake. Lap after lap, the bike simply stopped responding. The lap chart doesn't hide it, it exposes it. Early phase, stable, controlled, competitive. Middle phase, hesitation, variation, drop. Final phase, survival. That wasn't a rider losing confidence, that was a system withdrawing its support mid-race, and the cost was brutal, from leading the fight to crossing the line in P10 not beaten but removed. Once the drop started, there was no correction, no recovery window, no second chance to rebuild, just positions vanishing, one after another, until the race itself disappeared. Ducati watched it unfold in real time. No pitboard can fix a bike that stops holding the front. No amount of aggression can restore trust once it's gone, because this wasn't about raw speed, he still had that. It was about continuity, and once continuity broke, the race was already over. They tried to bury it in the noise, penalty, incident, chaos, point the finger at Marc Marquez, claim the long lap changed everything. It didn't. Marc's race only made the wound easier to ignore. He started from the pack, served the penalty, fought back to P5. It looked like damage control, but look closer. Even without the penalty, he wasn't getting to the front early enough to control the race. Opening phase gone, middle phase unstable, final phase too late, fast enough to recover but never early enough to dictate. Same fracture, different rider, same system. Because right now Ducati does one thing very well, react. But reaction is not control, and control is what wins championships. While Ducati was reacting, someone else had already finished building the race. Marco Bezzecchi didn't attack Coda, he removed it. Lap 1, lead taken, after that nothing. No fluctuation, no mid-race collapse, no phase drop, just a clean, repeatable, untouchable line. 121 laps now, not just lead owned. And that's where the wound opens completely. Ducati didn't just lose a race, they lost the ability to interfere. No pressure phase, no attack window, no late race reversal, just watching a rider disappear into the distance with no structure left to follow. They will call it a wake-up call, because calling it what it really is would mean admitting something they cannot afford to say out loud. This wasn't a bad weekend, it was a demonstration. Aprilia built a race and locked it down. Ducati entered that race and could not change it, not with Bagnaia, not with Marquez, not with pace, not with experience. Because once the race crossed into the phase Ducati cannot control, the result was already decided. The most dangerous part, it didn't look like a collapse, it looked like a fade, gradual, quiet, almost normal. That's how systems fail, not with explosions but with silence, with lap times that stop matching intent, with riders asking for grip that never returns, with positions lost that nobody can defend. Bagnaia didn't lose 10 places, he lost the race the moment the bike stopped holding him. Marc didn't miss the podium, he arrived after it was already gone. And Ducati didn't just have a bad wake-up call. That's how they said it, soft words, clean words, safe words. But the data doesn't speak like that, it bleeds. Act 1, the wound. Ducati didn't lose Coda on Sunday, they lost it the moment their race stopped behaving like a race, and the first rider it broke was Francesco Bagnaia. He led not briefly, not by accident. He controlled the sprint, built rhythm, dictated pace like the rider Ducati keeps insisting he still is. Then the floor moved, not in one mistake, not in one overtake. Lap by lap, the bike stopped answering. The lap chart doesn't hide it, it exposes it. Early phase, stable, controlled, competitive. Middle phase, hesitation, variation, drop. Final phase, survival. That wasn't a rider losing confidence, that was a system withdrawing support mid-race, and the cost wasn't subtle, from leading the fight to crossing the line in P10 not beaten removed. Because once the drop began, there was no correction, no recovery window, no second phase to rebuild, just positions disappearing, one then another, then the race itself. Ducati watched it happen in real time. No pitboard can fix a bike that stops holding the front. no aggression can recover trust once it breaks, because this wasn't about speed, he had it. It was about continuity, and once that broke, the race was already gone. They tried to hide it inside the noise. Penalty, incident, chaos, point at Marc Marquez, say the long lap changed everything. It didn't. Marc's race only made the wound easier to ignore. Start in the pack, serve the penalty, fight back to P5, looks like damage control, but look again, even without the penalty he wasn't arriving early enough to control the race. The opening phase gone, the middle phase unstable, the final phase too late, fast enough to recover, not early enough to dictate. And that's the same fracture, different rider, same system. Because Ducati right now can do one thing very well, react. But reaction isn't control, and control is what wins championships. While Ducati was reacting, someone else had already finished building the race. Marco Bezzecchi didn't attack Coda, he removed it. Lap 1, lead taken, after that nothing. No fluctuation, no mid-race collapse, no phase drop, just a line, clean, repeatable, untouchable, 121 laps now, not lead owned. And that's where the wound opens fully, because Ducati didn't just lose a race, they lost the ability to interfere. No pressure phase, no attack window, no late race reversal, just watching a rider leave and not having the structure to follow. They called it a wake-up call. That's convenient, because calling it a design flaw would mean admitting it was built this way. This didn't start at Coda, Coda just removed the cover, the mechanism was already there, hidden inside results, masked by pace, protected by riders who could ride around it. Now it's exposed. Ducati doesn't lose races because it's slow, it loses races because it cannot hold a race together once the tire stops behaving perfectly, and that failure lives in one place, front-end trust. The opening laps, fine, fresh tire, full grip, predictable load, that's Ducati territory, that's where Francesco Bagnaia looks like a champion again, that's where Marc Marquez can still attack, still commit, still believe the front will stay, because in that window the bike behaves exactly as designed, precise, fast, sharp. But MotoGP races aren't decided there, they are decided in the phase nobody talks about, the moment the tire stops being perfect. Lap 7, 8, 9, that's where the mechanism activates, grip drops, surface evolves, load becomes inconsistent, and Ducati stops being predictable, not slow, unstable. That's the difference nobody wants to say out loud, because instability doesn't show up in top speed, it shows up in hesitation, it shows up in riders not committing to entry, it shows up in lap times that look fine until you realize they're not repeatable. And that's exactly what the data shows. Bagnaia's drop wasn't sudden, it was progressive, because once the front stopped talking he had to start asking questions, and in MotoGP the moment you ask the bike a question you're already late. Same structure, different outcome for Marc, he didn't collapse, he adapted, but adaptation is just controlled limitation. Start deep in the pack, serve the long lap, come back through the field, looks impressive, but look at the timing. All of it happens after the race is already structured, after Marco Bezzecchi has already built the gap, after the control phase is gone. Marc isn't controlling races right now, he's surviving them, and survival doesn't win championships. Now look at Aprilia, not faster in raw pace, not dominant in qualifying, but stable where it matters. Mid-race, when grip drops, their bike doesn't ask questions, it answers them. That's control. And that's why Bezzecchi doesn't need to fight, because the fight phase never arrives. This is where Ducati trapped itself. They built a machine optimized for peak performance, maximum attack, maximum entry speed, maximum reward when everything is aligned. But racing doesn't stay aligned. Tracks evolve, tires degrade, and when that happens, Ducati doesn't transition, it fractures. And here's the part nobody in red will say, this problem didn't appear this year, it was already there, it just never stayed exposed long enough to matter. Because last year Marc Marquez could override it, late braking, instinct, commitment beyond the limit. He could ride through instability until he couldn't. Indonesia took that last millimeter of margin, and now the bike has to stand on its own, it doesn't. This is Ducati struggling to beat Aprilia. This is Ducati running a system that only works in perfect conditions, while Bezzecchi is racing in conditions that never break. And the worst part, someone benefits from this, because when Ducati collapses mid-race it doesn't just lose, it hands control to whoever built stability, and right now that isn't red. Bagnaia's drop wasn't a rider failure, It was the exact moment the bike stopped being what it promised him. Marc's recovery wasn't a comeback, it was proof he can't access the race early enough anymore. And Ducati's wake-up call isn't a warning, it's an admission. They built a machine that wins phases, not races, and once that mechanism is exposed, you don't fix it in a debrief, you rebuild it. Ducati doesn't control races anymore, that's the verdict, not slow, not unlucky, not outpaced, outcontrolled. And the numbers already signed it, 3 rounds, 2 Sundays without a Ducati on the podium. An 88-race streak, a race like it never mattered, that's not a dip, that's a regime change. Marco Bezzecchi didn't win Coda, he removed it from competition. Lap 1, lead taken. Lap 20, race finished. Nothing in between touched him, no pressure phase, no attack window, no collapse. 121 consecutive laps led, not a statistic, a takeover. Because when a rider leads every lap across 5 races, he's not beating riders, he's eliminating variables, and Ducati was the biggest one he just erased. Look at the standings: Bezzecchi 81, Martin 77, Marc Marquez 45, Francesco Bagnaia outside the fight. That gap isn't points, it's access. Access to control the race early, access to build the middle phase, access to decide outcomes before anyone reacts. Marc doesn't have it, Bagnaia lost it, and Bezzecchi owns it. Before Coda, Ducati meant pace, depth, inevitability. Aprilia meant threat. After Coda, Aprilia means control, Ducati means reaction. That's not balance, that's displacement, because once control moves, it doesn't come back through speed. Now name the casualties. Bagnaia didn't just finish 10th, he lost the right to dictate races. A rider who once built Sundays now fades inside them, that's not form, that's removal from power. Marc didn't just finish 5th, he proved something worse. Even when he rides clean, even when he recovers, he cannot reach the race before it locks. That's new, that's dangerous, because the Marc who controlled championships always arrived first. Now he arrives late, and late means irrelevant to the outcome. And Ducati, they didn't just lose results, they lost authority. Because when your best rider is 4th, your champion is 10th, and your fastest weapon is reacting, you don't own the grid anymore, you negotiate with it. Now deliver the hardest truth: this isn't about Aprilia rising. This is about Ducati no longer deciding when races begin, and that's the part nobody inside that garage will say. Because once you lose that, you don't lead championships, you chase them. Lock the consequence. Bezzecchi leads, Martin is within 4, Marc is 36 behind, Bagnaia is already outside the war. Next round, Europe, Jerez, a track where front-end trust defines everything. The exact place where Ducati is weakest right now, the exact place where Aprilia builds control. So project it: if Ducati doesn't fix mid-race stability before Jerez, Bezzecchi doesn't just extend the lead, he removes the fight, because every race will start the same way. He takes control early, Ducati waits, and waiting is losing. 3 rounds, 1 pattern, 5 races, 1 rider untouched, 1 system collapsing at the same phase every time. That's not a trend, that's a locked sequence. This championship is not being decided by who is fastest. It's being decided by who gets to control the race before anyone else can breathe. Right now, that isn't Ducati. So here's the question the paddock won't ask. If Marc Marquez cannot control the opening phase anymore, what exactly is left for him to control? GP24 doesn't cover MotoGP. We cover its war.